the mitral valve had prolapsed even further. I was the only young person there. There was only one time during the hospital visit that I cried. My mental health just basically took a complete nosedive. Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I'm gonna be telling you about my open heart surgery that I got when I was 17, so in 2018. If you haven't watched my What It's Like to Live with Marfan Syndrome video, I would highly recommend that you watch that one first, because it will give a lot of context to what I'm talking about today. Just a disclaimer before I get into everything. I'm going to be brutally honest in this video. I'm gonna go through chronologically getting the surgery and the recovery process of it, the major things that went wrong, and also the impact that it had on my mental health. I had a very bad experience with the recovery. If you are watching this video as someone who has a similar kind of surgery coming up, this might not be the video for you at this time. I understand the curiosity, but everyone's experiences will be so wildly different. Listening to someone who had a very negative experience might not be beneficial for your mental health, especially if you are prone to overthinking or internalizing things that you hear. I absolutely hate the idea of scaring anyone. This is just my experience. So if you watched my previous video, you know that I was born with Marfan Syndrome. It affects a lot of things, but like I said, if you want more information about it, you can just click the link somewhere on the screen and you can watch that video first. Ever since I was born, I've had an issue with my mitral valve in my heart. I've been on beta blockers ever since I was very small, and they've also been monitoring the situation every year. At some point it was even every 6 months. This whole chain of events kind of gets started in the late 2017 when I noticed that my overall health or condition was kind of going down. I was getting winded way more quickly, even just maybe walking with a backpack on. At PE, I was also getting arrhythmia a lot more regularly than I did before. We did my usual 6-month tests, and they found out that the mitral valve had prolapsed even further. Then they did an MRI and also a cardiac stress test. I can't remember if I was cycling or if I was running, but it was one of those two, and the tests for that compared to my previous ones had absolutely collapsed. My stamina had gone down so much, like very dramatically in a short period of time. They kind of knew immediately that, yeah, the surgery is very imminent now. It's just a matter of kind of finding the right time, taking into account my studies as well. So I was in high school at this time. I was 17. So I got all of these tests done in late 2017 and early 2018. For the actual surgery date, we ended on the 17th of May 2018. Before the surgery, I also met up with the main surgeon and we went through a very detailed plan of what he was going to do and how he was gonna fix the mitral valve. There were a few options, so he was saying that if it's possible, he's just gonna kind of like stitch my own back to the shape that it should be, or if that's not possible, then they're going to put in a mechanical valve. I also had an appointment with a physiotherapist and we kind of just went over the exercises that I would have to do after the surgery while recovering at the hospital, and also when I got back home they showed me how to properly get up from bed after having that kind of surgery, because they rip you open. You have to get up kind of using this rope that's tied to your bed, kind of pulling yourself up with your hands. Also all these exercises, like breathing exercises. I had a bottle with a straw and I had to blow in that multiple times a day. We get to the actual surgery date, which was, like I said, the 17th of May. Of course, like before any major surgery, you cannot eat or drink for at least 8 hours, I think it is. I took my normal medication in the morning, so my beta blockers. We drove to the hospital in Helsinki. I think we arrived around 8 or 9 a.m. We go to the shared waiting room for all the people who are heading into surgeries. I get changed into the hospital garments. They almost immediately give me a little cup of pills, which is just a pre-medication for the surgery. So it's anxiety medicine and I think, antibiotics already at that point. The pills kicked in quite quick, so I didn't feel nervous at all during that time. They also taped my backside completely, so my legs, my back, my arms, anything that's gonna be in contact with the bed, because the surgery lasts for quite a long time and it's just to prevent bed sores. And of course, after the surgery, I was in the ICU. It's a lot of laying down. After waiting there for a little bit with my family, I was rolled into the surgery room. This I can remember kind of clearly, but I was just laying in the bed. They pushed me there. We waited outside the surgery room for quite a bit. Then I walked into the surgery room myself. What always surprises me is how cold surgery rooms are. If you didn't watch my previous video, in addition to the heart surgery, I've been to like 8 eye surgeries, so I have quite a lot of experience in the operating room, but it always surprises me how cold it is. My friend asked me to include this tidbit of information. When you actually go into the operating room, the table that you get on, it's not a hard metal table like you sometimes see in, I guess, movies. It's a very comfortable, warm bed. Obviously, it's not a traditional bed, but it is still very comfortable and it's heated and it has padding. It's quite nice because the operating room is so cold, but then when you actually lay down in the bed, it's heated and they give you a blanket. So it's quite comfortable. Of course, because I was having an open heart surgery, they wanted me to lay down on my back and then with my arms stretched out. So like they immediately start the prep. Head nurse, I guess, comes up and introduces herself. I remember she was extremely sweet. I'm laying down, so she's like looking down on me and she's like petting my head a little bit and introducing herself and telling me what they're doing. They're gonna start prepping now. They're gonna put in the IVs. The anesthesiologist is gonna come by and say hi to me, and then lastly the surgeon. I'm just laying there. I'm also not wearing my glasses at this point, so I can't really see anything. Honestly, talking about this in so much detail, I can like notice my hands getting a little bit sweaty because I'm reliving it so vividly. But like at this point, it's not really a negative experience per se. Even though I got the anxiety medicine, at this point, I am getting a little bit nervous, which I think is completely normal. It's just a weird environment to be in. So they finish putting in the IVs and all the monitors like the EKG patches. Then the anesthesiologist comes around and introduces himself. Quickly afterwards, the main surgeon comes and says hi and lets me know that they're gonna be starting very soon. The anesthesiologist comes back around and says that we're gonna start putting you under now. They put on this breathing mask on my face and just tell me to take big deep breaths. They tell me when they actually press the button to start putting the medication in my IV to put me under. It's always such a weird sensation because it stings a bit. It feels extremely cold when the medicine goes in. Immediately when you feel that, you know that you are going to be out in like a couple seconds. So I feel that they have the mask on my face. I'm just breathing in like very slowly and then I'm out. I actually have no idea how long the surgery lasted, so I'm gonna have to consult my parents on that because I also couldn't find the info in my medical records for some reason. I went through all of my medical records for this video. It did not say how long the actual surgery was. So in the ICU, my memories are very, very faded, but the couple things that I can remember are that my throat hurt so bad, like so bad, and it just felt just dry and disgusting. The other thing was that I really wanted orange juice and I kept asking for it. My family came to see me there and they said that I was cursing like crazy. I do curse in my everyday life, but they said that it was so out of control. I wasn't being mean or offensive to anyone. I was just very much demanding that I get orange juice, and I did finally get the orange juice, and I do remember that very clearly because immediately when I took a sip I was like, this is the best fucking orange juice I've ever had in my entire life. But that's basically everything that I remember from the ICU. I think at some point they took some kind of imaging from me, and they told me that they were gonna do that, and I was very distraught about it and saying, oh, like, I don't want to get up, I don't want to go anywhere. They said that I don't have to go anywhere, it's okay, they can do it there. I have no idea if that actually happened, but that's the funny thing about being in the hospital on some heavy meds, because there's so many things that I think back on, and I don't know if that actually happened. Anyway, I was in the ICU for 2 days. So after the ICU, I got transferred into the actual inpatient ward. I was the only young person there. It was full of elderly people. There was always multiple people per room, but since I was the youngest person there and kind of the most lucid, they actually managed to get me my own single room, which was such luxury, to be honest, and I'm so grateful for, because everyone is so heavily medicated that being in a little room with 4 people who are completely out of it sounds awful. And I've also been in those situations before during my other surgeries. At least for this very, very major one, I kind of got my own privacy and peace. Basically, in the ward, it really did feel like every day was the exact same because the schedule was so rigid. For the first few days, my memories are again pretty blurry. I just remember being so sore and tired. I was constantly, even in the middle of having a conversation, I would just doze off and not realize it myself. Then I would wake up and be surprised that my parents are there, even though they had already been there for quite a while and we had talked. So I was just very loopy, very out of it. I do remember being in some pain, but the nurses were very adamant about immediately saying if I had any noticeable pain. I was also extremely nauseous during the first day. I think it had something to do with the pain medicine that they were giving me, but immediately when I said about it, they gave me nausea medicine. That high of being very nauseous and then suddenly feeling completely fine is unreal. Honestly, it felt really good. They would keep checking up on my wound, like changing my bandages. It was pretty rough looking. I don't have any pictures of it from that time because it kind of also irked myself looking at it. I do have some pictures of it later on though. In the hospital ward, I was still connected to so many machines. So I had a catheter, IVs, tubes going into my lungs for draining the liquid out. Then I had epicardial pacing wires. So they are little thin wires that go from me, they went from here directly to my heart. So if I got any sort of arrhythmia, they could very quickly shock it. I might be forgetting something else, but basically, oh, of course, EKG. That one I also had on constantly. So getting up from the bed was quite an ordeal, but they still made me start walking almost immediately. And I started doing the physiotherapy stuff, blowing in the bottle, doing little stretches, getting out of the bed on my own, all of that stuff. I think it might have been on the third day that I was also able to get a shower. It wasn't a proper shower, of course, because I was still connected to so many things and my wound couldn't get wet. So it was just a nurse helping me like with a damp towel and getting me kind of freshened up. I do remember after that feeling so good just to get all the sweat and everything off, and I slept so deep after. I also had a fever on and off during this time, which they weren't hugely worried about, but it just felt really ass because I was sweating so much, so the fever would go up, I'd be freezing, then it would go down, I'd be sweating and really uncomfortable, and it felt like it just kept going and going. My parents would visit me every day and they would bring me any snacks or food that I wanted, but to be honest, my appetite was very close to zero, so I would ask for very light food. So watermelon was a big one that I had a lot. I also remember that I really wanted sushi, but you can't have raw fish at that time. I was still eating the hospital food. I don't remember having strong opinions about the food being served. I think I ate as much as I could. And now maybe for one of the kind of uncomfortable things about recovery that people don't really discuss, because oftentimes in these stories it's like, everyone rallies around this person who is sick, and the person who is in that position is very grateful and very happy to have all this support, and it's painted in a certain light. But in my case, Like I said, my parents visited me every single day, but I did not want them to. I did not want them there. I tolerated them coming there. But just the thought of anyone else coming, like one of my other relatives or friends or anyone else, I hated the idea. My parents still brought my sister in to see me, and I was so angry. I can't really remember this, but obviously we have talked afterwards. My sister and I were very close, but when she came in, I was basically just yelling at my parents saying, "Why the F did you bring her here? I did not want her here. I don't want anyone to visit me. I don't want anyone here." And of course, that's really rough for the family members to hear. I feel very bad about that, even though I can't remember it. Of course, I can remember not wanting anyone to visit, but that specific incident, I don't. And I don't know if that's just me, because others really seem to want people around them and want people to visit them. But for me, I so badly did not want anyone there. Honestly, if you have any similar experiences, I'm so curious. How was it for you? Did you want your family there? Or did it make you irrationally angry or uncomfortable to have them there? There was only one time during the hospital visit that I cried, and it was when they took those fucking wires out. So they removed the chest tubes that I had going into my lungs, and then afterwards they removed the epicardial pacing wires. I bawled. The chest tubes, when they pulled them out, it wasn't that bad. Of course, it felt extremely strange and it made a very disgusting sound, like a wet kind of like sound, which was nasty, but it wasn't that bad. But when they said that they are taking the wires out, I was like, okay, sure, like, let's do it. So I lay down, they just grab onto these wires. I think there was three of them. One by one, the nurses just start pulling them out, and my god, it hurt so bad, and it was the weirdest sensation because I could feel my heart, like I could feel it touching my heart, which is so weird to say, but I could feel it when they were pulling it, and my heart would make like a little, I don't even know how to describe it, but just a weird movement. And then when they were pulling them out, I could feel it in my muscles, and it hurt so bad. So that was the only time that I cried, but I cried very silently and very dignified. So I just had like tears rolling down my face while they were doing this. And like I said, there were three wires, so they did it three times. So that was the most quote unquote traumatic experience I had while in ward. Of course, these days were also filled with MRIs and other imaging, lots of blood work, getting woken up in the middle of the night to take blood work. But I was so out of it and so confused that it might as well have been in the middle of the day for all I knew. So at the end, I was only at the hospital for 1 week. I came in on the 17th, had the surgery, and I checked out on the 24th. That is an incredibly short amount of time to spend in ward, and I'm not gonna lie, I was scared shitless when they checked me out. I was still having fever on and off. At the hospital, they had shown me how to inject myself for the blood thinning medication, but I still felt so incredibly unprepared. On our way home, when my parents picked me up and we were driving home, I bawled like a little baby. Basically, I was completely convinced my parents or myself would just miss something and I would fucking die. And it would just be because of our own incompetence, or just because we're not doctors. Like, we don't know what the hell we're doing. Just me crying in the back seat, like in complete distress. But genuinely, I feel like I should not have been checked out of the hospital that soon. I think I'm gonna take a little lunch break at this point, and when I come back, the lighting will probably dramatically different. So apologies for that in advance. What happened when I actually got home and began the recovery process on my own? Well, first of all, unrelated to this, but definitely related to my mental health, was that our bunny died the day that I got home from the hospital. We had had him for almost 10 years. He was getting like pretty old already, and when we got back, we realized that he couldn't really like walk anymore. He couldn't walk straight, so my mom obviously took him to the vet. They said that there's nothing that they can do, that it's the best choice to just put him down. So they did. My God, I was not at the vet. I remember being outside in our yard and just sitting there on the stairs and hyperventilating. I thought that I was actually gonna die because keep in mind, I was still very feverish and very woozy. Just gotten out of the hospital. I was already kind of mentally a wreck because I thought that there's no way that we would be able to keep me alive. And I remember my grandpa trying to console me, but I was not hearing it. I was crying so hard and my chest hurt so bad. I remember going upstairs. It wasn't even late, but just going upstairs and still crying, but passing out almost immediately. So I was in like complete hysteria basically. So there were a few things that we had to keep an eye on right from the beginning. So first of all, I was on blood thinning medication to prevent blood clots. It's very like standard procedure after a surgery like this. I had to get blood tests done every single day to make sure that the levels were okay. For some reason, my body was just really weird with the medication, so it wouldn't stay stable. Normally, at some point, you can just go once a week, but for me, I literally went every single day for at least a month. And even after that, I would maybe go every other day. So it was a complete disaster because the hospital was also very bad at communicating the results. Sometimes we'd go the whole day without hearing back from them and just not knowing if I should take the medicine or not and how much I should take. If the levels weren't good enough and they needed kind of like a quick solution for that, I had to inject myself with something called Clexane. Like I said, they taught me how to do that at the hospital. The reason it sucked was because of Marfan. I'm very thin. I don't have a lot of fat on me. And, they recommend that you do the injections on your lower stomach. I don't have a lot of fat there. It was pretty bleak and I was almost like running out of places where to inject myself on my stomach. I kept getting huge bruises. I guess I was just very bad at it. And also because I was getting my blood drawn so much, at some point, both of my arms, like the place where you usually take the blood from, became so bruised that they could not get blood anymore. It would take them so many tries to get anything to come out, and it was really painful. So then on the 28th, so keep in mind, I got discharged from the hospital on the 24th. So only 4 days afterwards, I had an AFib, which is a very bad form of arrhythmia. And this is what I mean when I said that I should have not been discharged, because I feel like in my gut I already knew that something was gonna go really wrong. My parents took me to the ER where they immediately saw what it was. And the reason why I noticed it was just because my heart was beating very quick. The rhythm was just off. It wasn't consistent and it was making me really dizzy and almost kind of nauseous. I had to lay in the ER for a few hours because I had already eaten and they had to put me under to shock me. They can't put you under if you've eaten recently, so I had to wait, I think maybe 4 hours or something. This is really gross, but while I was in the ER, it's just an open room with curtains between the beds. So there was an elderly man next to me. I couldn't see him. There was just a curtain. He kept defecating on himself, and of course the nurses were trying to get him cleaned up and change the sheets, but it kept happening and the elderly man was very out of it in a way, so he couldn't do anything about it himself, which is pretty bleak. Like the things that you see at a hospital and in the ER really puts things into perspective. So let's just say it was not a pleasant few hours. I was already nauseous, so I kept being on the verge of throwing up the entire time basically. They finally wheeled me into another room, put me under, shocked me, and then I woke up. That was also such a good high, to be honest. I don't know what they gave me, but that was good. So I was still having the fever and it was always over 38 degrees, so like an actual proper fever. So we went to the ER multiple times because of this. On the 1st of June, we went to the ER again. They kept saying that I have the flu and I'm still so baffled by that. Like, can you guys not see that I was just in an open heart surgery? Should this not be looked at? They did know that there was still also some liquid in my lungs still, but for some reason they still thought that it was just a flu. And it turned out that I have pericardium. And the way that they figured that out was a weird chain of events. There was a doctor in Helsinki who had randomly been looking at my records. He was a cardiologist, and he gave me a call and asked about my symptoms, these flu-like symptoms that I've been having. And I explained everything to him. He said, okay, why don't you come over to our clinic and I'll have a look. We went, and he was like, yeah, it's pericardium, actually. It's not the flu. So that was really great. But yeah, I got put on antibiotics. Luckily, they did diagnose me properly this time, so the antibiotics did work. It just took a while. I started feeling a bit better since I wasn't constantly having a fever anymore. And then, just 2 days later, I had another AFib. So this time, I actually did get taken in ward at my local hospital, and I stayed there the night. They gave me medication. Their rhythm turned back to normal with that. They also put me on another medication for a couple months, and that was a specific type of arrhythmia medication that requires really strict testing to make sure that it doesn't fuck up all your other internal organs while you're on it. There was so much that happened between May and September. The couple AFib things and getting pericardium, all the issues that I had with the blood thinning medication. I just kept having weird arrhythmias as well, so we were still constantly in ER during that time, but it was never AFib again. It was just other arrhythmia that either went away on its own or I just stayed in the hospital. So that whole time was, and I'm not even joking, an absolute nightmare. I also had issues with my eye at the same time. That was the cause of the blood thinning medication, but I explain a little bit more about that in the other video that I did. So if you're interested, maybe go watch that one because I'm not gonna go into the eye side of things in this video. I finally had my final checkup in September, the 13th of September. I got flashbanged by a picture of me during open heart surgery. So I literally saw my own insides. The surgeon did not give me any warning that he was going to show that picture. He was showing other medical diagrams first, and then he went like one forward, and it was just me on the operating table, like with my chest open, and you could see all my internal organs. It was so absurd. I actually had to look away because I was just like, I don't think we are meant to see the inside of our own bodies. At this point, I still had a little bit of fluid in my lungs, but it wasn't anything that they were worried about. They said that it would drain on its own. And they also took me off the blood thinning medication. I was so excited for that because I was just so fucking done getting the blood tests. So I want to talk a little bit about my mental health afterwards. I think the one word to describe my state of mind during that time is hopeless. Like absolutely hopeless. Things just kept going wrong, and I genuinely felt like my body was trying to kill me. Like it did not want me to be around any longer. I remember one of the constant thoughts that I had during that time was that I'm gonna go to sleep and I'm gonna die in my sleep, and my parents are gonna find my corpse in the morning. It did not help that I had to miss basically a complete year of school because of this, because of the continued health challenges that I still had after the final checkup. I was still not completely recovered physically, but especially not mentally. It genuinely felt like it could only get worse. There was other things going on within my family at that time as well. Someone got diagnosed with cancer. They're doing amazing now, but at the time, obviously, that's extremely scary. And honestly, like after the final checkup, it felt like everything was crashing. My mental health just basically took a complete nosedive. I felt like during this time I was kind of just in survival mode. I had the final checkup and they kind of gave the final stamp of approval of the surgery actually went very well. Yeah, your recovery might have been difficult, but the result is very good. When that was finally said and done, I felt like I kind of finally just collapsed. I did not see the point anymore, if you catch my drift. I was doing very bad, like very, very bad. I got quite isolated from my friends, except maybe for one, and shout out to her. We've known each other since kindergarten. She was kind of the only person aside from my family who I would hang out with. All of my other friends, I don't blame them at all. I just feel like I was probably pretty miserable to be around. I just felt so out of place, and I genuinely felt like I did not understand them anymore, and they maybe didn't understand me. Just going through that whole experience put everything into perspective for me, and I could not for the life of me listen to people complain about such fucking asinine things anymore. This probably comes across as a bit aggressive, but genuinely, when people would complain about like, oh, this guy isn't texting me back, or I'm stressed about homework, I literally wanted to strangle them, because it's like, I'm scared about dying in my sleep and my parents finding my corpse, and this is what you're worried about. But genuinely, I felt like I could not relate anymore to the things that they were struggling with or complaining about. And now, of course, I understand that if you've had a very easy life, and there's nothing wrong with that, but if you had a very easy life, then some guy not texting you back or being late somewhere might genuinely be the worst thing that has ever happened to you in your entire life. So then it will like actually feel bad to you. But since I had these awful experiences, I just could not relate to it anymore. So I did end up starting therapy, and it was solely because of my mom. Obviously, everyone around me could see that I was not doing too hot, but she actually got the ball rolling and got me a therapist. Again, I'm pretty lucky that I live in Finland because the therapy is also sponsored in a way by the government, so you only have to pay small part of it yourself. So I started that, and I actually did therapy for around 2 years, so quite a long time. And I really feel like it helped me a lot. It gave me really good tools to deal with things. I did get officially diagnosed with depression and an anxiety disorder. I'm happy to report that I'm doing much better now, but to bring this all back around, I really do feel like the healthcare professionals dropped the ball here a little bit when it came to preparing me for what was to come. They really only focused on the physical aspect, physical therapy, and all these exercises that I needed to do to recover completely. But no one really ever talked about mental health and how much of a hit it can take in these sorts of situations. So I guess I just wish that I had been better prepared for everything. But I was also very young. I was 17, I turned 18 during all of this. I also just didn't have that many tools in a way to deal with like a mental health crisis. But generally, that whole thing was definitely the lowest point in my life. I did not think that I was gonna make it through it, and I didn't even see the point in why I should, in a way, because if this is what it's gonna be like, if I'm gonna have these issues for the rest of my life, if I have to go through this again, I'm checking out. That was my mindset. And looking back, I'm still honestly pretty surprised that I made it through. But at least now, whenever something bad happens, I can kind of look back and say, at least it's not that. At least it's not that bad. But of course, what scares me now is the knowledge that I will most likely have to have another heart surgery at some point in my life. I'm really afraid that it will be like part two of this whole thing. Of course, I'll be older and hopefully I'll know how to deal with things better. And since I've already made it through once, then maybe second time will be easier. Realizing how fragile life actually is, and this is very cliche, but actually having that experience and realizing it is very eye-opening, and it genuinely changes your perspective on things forever. So I do still feel like I sometimes have a difficult time relating with people who've never gone through something very difficult. I maybe even get frustrated with them. You know, when you can just tell that someone has never really had like a real struggle in their life. And my point is not to shame anyone who has not had a traumatic experience or whatever. I'm kind of just talking from experience. Of course, if you've had an easy life, then girl, more power to you, to be honest. even though I wrote a little script for this, I still feel like I probably missed something. So from my previous Marfan video, I've already written down some questions that people had. So I'm thinking of doing a little Q&A at some point. Maybe you can leave some questions in the comments as well. I'll answer them now too. Maybe I can give a more kind of in-depth answer in a video as well. I would love to have a conversation. I was so happy about the reception that my first video got. Genuinely, guys, thank you so much for watching and for leaving such amazing thoughtful comments. It blew my mind how many people it reached. So I'd love to keep the conversation going, and I just want to thank you so much for watching. Hopefully I will see you in my next video. Bye bye.